afternoon. It's Tuesday, March 1st. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open with the violent clashes that erupted overnight in the Kalandia refugee camp. 10 soldiers and border policemen were wounded, one of them moderately. Palestinian sources said at least one person was killed and dozens of Palestinians injured. The clashes broke out after 2 soldiers accidentally entered the camp. IBA's Avigdor Dichter has that story.
Shortly before midnight, a large presence of security forces, including special IDF and border police units and Shin Bet personnel, entered the camp to rescue 2 soldiers from the Army's K9 Orkets unit who had driven into the camp by mistake and were confronted by a raging mob. The soldiers were forced to abandon their jeep after they were bombarded with barrages of stones and firebombs that set the vehicle on fire. Fierce gun battles erupted between troops and Palestinian gunmen as security forces searched for the soldiers who separated. Half an hour later, one of the soldiers hiding in the yard of a house inside the camp was located. Concerns rose for the second soldier, who had not communicated with security forces for some time. He was picked up an hour later at the entrance to the nearby settlement Kochav Yaakov. The unrest abated this morning. An IDF bulldozer entered the camp to retrieve the burned-out jeep. The 2 soldiers told their superiors they'd been misled by the Waze application navigation system on their mobile phones that instructed them to drive into the camp. Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon praised security forces for their rapid response. He stressed he himself realized some time ago not to rely solely on satellite navigation application systems, but rather navigate using maps. The army, meanwhile, is investigating who sent the 2 soldiers out on the mission and whether they were briefed before setting out. Security officials noted it's not the first time soldiers or civilians relying on the navigation systems mistakenly enter Palestinian-controlled areas. Avigdor Dichter, IBA News.
Right-wing activist Yehuda Glick visited the Temple Mount early this morning for the first time since being seriously injured in an assassination attempt on his life in October 2014. Last week, the Jerusalem Magistrates Court lifted a ban preventing Glick from going to the holy site after he was acquitted on charges of assaulting a Palestinian woman. Glick's visit this morning passed without incident. A heated debate in the Knesset's Constitution, Law and Justice Committee, which yesterday approved the first reading of the controversial expulsion legislation that will allow a majority of 90 lawmakers to boot out a Knesset member. The bill is expected to be brought before the Knesset plenum next week for its first of 3 votes. In a written opinion read before the committee, Attorney General Avichai Mendelblit warned of the dangers the law posed and urged lawmakers for greater caution because of the structural issues the bill creates. The passing of the law proposal was welcomed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who initially brought it up. During yesterday's stormy debate, Joint Arab List Chairman Ayman Odeh threatened that if any members of the Ballot Party are expelled, he will personally resign. Former head of the Shin Bet and Likud lawmaker Avigdor Dichter traded barbs with Ayman Odeh, head of the United Arab List. This after Odeh, in a televised interview, accused Dichter of sending people to assassinate the late PLO leader Yasser Arafat, as well as Hamas spiritual leader Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and his spokesperson Rantisi. Odeh, who was already fired up after the stormy debate concerning the controversial expulsion bill, claimed Dichter sent people to murder the leadership of the Palestinian people, and yet he still remains in the Knesset. Responding to the accusations, Dichter said Odeh has become the representative for Hamas leaders in the Knesset, and by his actions is forfeiting the security of Jewish and Arab Israeli citizens. The decision to unilaterally withdraw from Gaza was a mistake. This according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who harshly criticized the move at a special memorial service in the Knesset, marking the 2nd anniversary of the death of former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Netanyahu said Sharon's plan failed to achieve its goal of bringing security and peace to Israel. He added that transferring control and responsibility for Gaza to the Palestinians did not set Israel on the path of peace, but enhanced the arming of terrorist organizations. Netanyahu insisted that necessary lessons must be learned, and any land Israel leaves in the future must be demilitarized. Amid reports of a normalization of ties between Israel and Turkey, experts are cautioning against high expectations. Alon Liel, a former envoy to Turkey who also served as the former Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, told IBA's Ari O'Sullivan he is not sure the reconciliation process will bear any diplomatic fruit.
It's not happening so far. There are lots of statements, but no signatures, no signing. What happened was that about 2 months ago, a little over 2 months ago, officials were sitting and reaching a draft, and then there was big noise here, ambassadors are coming back. Since then, a lot of pressures on the Israeli government were applied against it, especially from Greece and Cyprus, Egypt, and recently also Russia. And it is becoming very difficult for the Prime Minister, who is also the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to sign, because there is a risk that by signing this agreement with Turkey, you are harming the agreements, relations, the understandings with these countries, especially Greece and Cyprus, with whom exactly a month ago we signed a trilateral agreement, including an energy component. Egypt, that is very worried about increased involvement of Turkey in Gaza, and Russia, that has a conflict, a serious conflict with Turkey at the moment, and is the big supplier of gas to Turkey, and is afraid that the Israeli gas will replace at least part of the Russian gas. So you have pressures that have emerged and have made the signing, as I see it, very difficult.
You know, one of the things that Turkey wanted as condition was to have the lifting the blockade of Gaza and also to have a port in Gaza, and yet now it doesn't seem to be that's what's going to happen. So how did Turkey accept that?
The problem is not Turkey. Turkey wants to sign. If you paid attention in the last 2 months, all the positive information was all the time coming from Ankara. Turkey even appointed or announced the appointment of an ambassador to Tel Aviv, indicating that it was. Even this very recent statement and the meeting of the National Security Council in Turkey, it's all coming from Ankara. The bottleneck is here, not in Turkey. So it's not a matter now of removing the siege, not removing the siege, and if maybe even not the formula. There are hesitations here, serious hesitations here.
You're indicating that the motivation is coming from Ankara. Sure. Why?
Why? This is very clear. Turkey has made all possible mistakes in the region in the last few years. It has a very serious conflict, even a war now with the Kurds. After several years of very serious peace process, everything collapsed. So it found itself very isolated in the region, and I think this is the reason it is trying to rebuild the contacts with Israel.
Do you think Israel should rebuild contact with Turkey?
Look, first of all, it's not my opinion here. I'm describing a situation. It is, during these 7 years, this Turkish vacuum was filled up by others. And these others, they are very friendly, almost in an alliance situation in several aspects with Israel. And in order to risk the contact with them, for Erdogan, who is a very unexpected guy, and you don't know what will happen in the region in a few months. We might have another round with Gaza. Where will he be? There might be a problem in Jerusalem. Where will Erdogan be? So to take the risk of rebuilding the contacts with Turkey and paying a price in other fronts, it's a dilemma. It's a diplomatic dilemma. It's not what I think. This is the situation.
The Israeli drinks firm SodaStream was forced to let go 74 Palestinian staff members yesterday after Israeli authorities refused to renew their work permits. The company held a farewell ceremony for the workers, many of whom were employed there for more than 5 years. Amidst calls to boycott the company that originally operated in Ma'ale Adumim, the firm relocated its factory to Rahat inside Israel in October, already letting go some 500 of its Palestinian workers. However, the Israeli authorities have refused to extend the remaining workers' permits that expired in February. The coordinator of government activities in the territories refused to comment on the issue, but noted that 58,000 Palestinians hold permits to work in Israel, and another 27,000 are permitted to work in settlements and industrial zones in Judea and Samaria. 4 senior members of the Egged bus company were questioned today under caution by police on suspicion of negligence and manslaughter in connection to the fatal bus number 402 accident in which 6 Israelis were killed. The 4 are suspected of allowing Chaim Biton, the bus driver, to continue working despite being aware of previous traffic accidents and violations he committed. The accident occurred last month on Highway 1 near the Anava interchange when Biton crashed into a parked truck on the side of the road. Biton was also suspected of trying to disable the tachograph after the accident. A report published by the Hotline for Refugees and Migrants in Israel reveals that some 5,000 foreign nationals held in 4 of Israel's detention facilities face harsh conditions. The detainees include asylum seekers, foreign workers, and tourists without visas. They apparently suffer from overcrowding, inadequate food, health care, and proper legal representation. The refugees' rights group claims these conditions are in violation of the law. Responding to the charges, the prison service issued a statement saying the report is biased and does not reflect the true reality at the detention facilities. Turning to the United States, where polling stations in a dozen states open today as residents are gearing up for Super Tuesday, the day when the largest number of American states hold their nominating contests for the upcoming presidential elections. Super Tuesday is considered the biggest day in the 2016 primary election cycle and may be a deciding factor in either advancing or halting many of the candidates' campaigns. As the presidential race goes national, Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump are hoping to put themselves way ahead. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio need strong turnouts to show that they can fight Trump in the long run. And Bernie Sanders is hoping to stem Clinton's momentum with a few wins of his own. By the end of today, Trump and Clinton could be set for a showdown.
Let me just tell you.
Well, how do you say welcome in Chinese? 5 young women from the ancient Chinese Jewish community of Kaifeng have arrived in Israel as new immigrants. Could this be the beginning of a flood of Chinese Olim? IBA's Ari O'Sullivan has that story.
Say shalom and welcome to the new immigrants from Kaifeng in far-off China.
Shelly is Tali.
Tali?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Tali.
Nice to meet you too.
So what are these 5 nice women from China doing here, you're asking?
The community itself has a huge desire to be reconnected with the Jewish people. However, for many different reasons throughout the decades and the centuries, it hasn't happened. And thankfully, today they allowed some of them to come to Israel to study. It's been a long time in coming, and hopefully soon we'll have more.
The origins of the 1,000-year-old community in China began with Iraqi or Persian Jewish merchants who traveled the Silk Route. They established a thriving community which reached its peak in the Ming Dynasty around 500 years ago. But widespread intermarriage and assimilation brought about its demise in the early 19th century. Yet descendants continue to observe Jewish customs and experience a revived interest in its roots. The communist rule virtually wiped out religious practice, but community members continue to mark their homes, refrain from eating pork, and the main road is still called Teaching the Torah Lane, in Chinese, of course.
Before 1,000 years, we have the synagogue, but after because the Yellow River, we have the flood, so the Bet Knesset destroyed, so we lose our Bet Knesset.
The man behind this aliyah is Michael Frund, who founded Shavei Israel, who continues to seek out the lost tribes.
The fact that we have Jewish sovereignty again in the land of Israel is itself a miracle, and it is that sovereignty here that allows so many Jews, such as yourselves, to come back from the 4 corners of the earth.
Hatikva in Chinese. Okay, it sounds better in Hebrew, but give these young women a little time, and they'll sing it in Hebrew too.
In local money matters, shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the late afternoon numbers. the weather forecast is calling for more of the same. Sharav heat wave conditions are expected to continue throughout the day tomorrow in most parts of the country. Here's a look at the highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. And that's all for this newscast. Ari O'Sullivan will be here tomorrow, same time, same channel. Make sure to join him. I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.